Good morning, Fiji, and welcome to another episode of the Brunch on My TV. I'm Stanley Simpson.
And I'm Jacquee Speight. Thank you for joining us again on another episode. We hope you've had a great Friday so far and are ready for the weekend because I am.
Yes, there's going to be not much sports this weekend.
No, not much sports this weekend.
Yeah, so but it's been another crazy week here in Fiji because
It has been.
as
It really has.
I think Jamie, can you bring up the headlines? It's all about the fuel prices that we're facing at
Yep,
the moment.
that's
Fuel
all
price
everyone's
increase.
talking about.
Fiji
Prices
Sun,
up.
prices up, relief in.
Yep.
But I don't know, if that headline is actually correct, because we've got to discuss that. Because there is relief.
Yes.
The
government has said they'll absorb the-
But we are paying the government, so essentially,
Yes.
EFL's we're paying EFL.
This is the power bill to go up and prices up, relief in. So that's with transportation.
And then the key concern I have there is how long this will be.
I was
Because,
just thinking the same last
Because
night when
once
I
the power
saw
bill,
it.
power bill goes up, it never
Yes.
comes down.
No.
I've never seen it come down.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
And I wrote a post yesterday that this brings back the questions about the sale of EFL, or the part sale, 44%,
Yeah.
which was supposed to, bring in new ideas, private investment, new technology. That's what we were promised, that it would
Yes.
then bring price down. It
that
hasn't
hasn't happened.
worked, and
Yeah.
then now because of it, having to survive, and everything's now about the bottom line, because
Yep.
partly privatized, and the government stepping in to bail it out, because obviously this is it's a need.
It is. It really
Electricity.
is. A lot of
And,
people going to be seeing their bills go from,
It's around. I've been seeing some analysis that it'll be around a $10 increase generally for some, and for
if anything, watch your bills closely.
Watch your bills
Watch your
closely.
bills closely.
We do not know how long
yeah.
this will be going for,
Yeah.
because the crisis in the Middle East is still kind of churning. I saw today that there's move towards a peace agreement, but we're dealing with Trump,
I know.
and then you're dealing with
and it's, every time
Iranian
they have a
regime.
ceasefire, it's a very fragile state.
Very fragile.
One minute you think you're making progress, and then all of a sudden he comes out with, just before this I had to make a decision if we were going to strike them again.
Yeah, there were some major announcements made over the last few days. Basically the municipal council elections local government elections being deferred.
Yes.
All of this is the result of
All
the
of
fuel
this
crisis.
is the result of it. Because he mentioned it was $18 million that had been set aside for the local government elections. And then he says the general elections is going ahead.
Yeah.
But the local government elections will be held when the time is right
after
to
the
have
general
them.
elections.
After the general elections.
So essentially, government's position is that they are prioritizing the expenses.
they are.
I'm also hearing another version of some political calculations, early
I
elections.
love
and
this
things.
because
But so we never know.
You always hear these
Things
things.
are serious, so we just keep working it out. And the two people best to work things out, people who are always on the pulse of what's happening in the country, are joining us soon. First, we have Stephen Ratuva from the University of Canterbury, and he's a political sociologist professor. And we're also joined by Fred Wesley, our regular contributor here on the
Yes.
Brunch from the Fiji Times.
From the Fiji Times.
Good morning, gentlemen. Bula Fred. Bula Stephen.
Bula, Ken, Bula, Jacquee.
Fred, Stephen, I'll come to you first. Sometimes we never know where to start about what's happening in the country, but maybe if you can just provide how you see the political and economic situation and dynamics we face in Fiji today.
Well, thank you so much, Stan. Thanks for very, very difficult questions. You don't know where to start. I'll probably start with the fuel crisis that we're facing at the moment, because it exacerbates a lot of the pre-existing issues and challenges to do with social protection, how the government is able to respond to that, and also in terms of our own policy in relation to climate change, particularly our the solar, wind, and power, alternative energy, which we haven't been working on as significantly as we should have. And then now, when you have the fuel crisis, it trickles down to different layers. At a time when Fiji is going through a different period, a very difficult period, rather, I still argue that we're still living in the long tail of the coups, a period of multi-layered crisis, of indecisiveness, leadership challenges, and issues of patronage of the politics and the judiciary in a state of turmoil at the moment. Then you have issues of drugs, HIV, and the health system has been in crisis for some time. And all these layers and layers of issues face, which are facing the country, are things which we really have to be looking at quite closely, because they impact on our ability to look at the future in terms of what's there for us. We are trying to review the Constitution. We have the TRC, which is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, hoping that it will address some of the issues of political tension. And then we also trying to review the legislation on election. And so there's so many things happening all at once. And of course, the pathway towards election, we're not really sure when it's going to happen. So all these things together, in a nutshell, it's very difficult to unpack. And that puts a lot of responsibilities and a lot of burden on the government and, of course, on the people as well.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, you what you mentioned is it's like a tangled
Yes.
web. We're like going through a tangled area,
Yeah.
very like a tangled bush, and like the wildlife capturing our legs, and basically all these things in the way, like
Yeah.
really can't see the horizon a
No.
bit, because
Yes,
of all
there's
these.
a lot of things
You mentioned
happening.
the judiciary, you mentioned the drug crisis, you mentioned the indecisiveness
yeah.
of leadership. I've always felt leadership was an issue, and your point about this being the tail end, we're still at the tail end of the coup. I mean, we've had instance now with the military still taking action unilaterally, so it kind of touches to your point, and this drugs crisis, and then trying to find the proper legislation that we think will take us forward in terms of the elections, the constitution, the referendum, and the municipal government elections. And then we now have this fuel crisis. I think, Steve, you made the great point
Yeah.
that we should have been working on alternative energies.
Yes.
This is, Steve, I think, before we bring Fred in, this is a risk that had been identified for a long time
very
ago,
long
but no
time.
action was
Yeah.
taken, right?
Absolutely. There has been the cry of the people of the Pacific, and of course, civil side organizations, as you know. Let's move towards alternative energy, because the big global crisis such as we're facing now will continue to happen. And those countries which have moved ahead in terms of the alternative energy sources are the ones who are doing well at the moment. We're able to respond in ways which are much more conducive to addressing the situation at the moment. So they're all interconnected. The addressing climate change, because we have relied too much on fossil fuel, and fossil fuel is very, very, not only is it dirty in terms of carbon emission, but it's also a lot of it is created in a part of the world which is always in a state of political uncertainty and crisis, as we're facing at the moment, and how long it will take because of the players who are involved. The Trump, who is unpredictable, unreliable, and of course Iran is pushing for certain agenda, and of course Israel behind that. The compromise is not visible in the immediate horizon at the moment.
Fred, just, asking, same question also posed to you is, what are your thoughts on the overall political situation and dynamics in Fiji today? The same question that we gave Professor. What are your thoughts as well?
Well, thank you, Stan. Thank you, Jacquee, and Professor Mbula. I mean, it's how can where can I even start? It's certainly going to be a major challenge for any government. Having to go through what we're going through now, as Steve has mentioned. So many things happening on the on the horizon. So many things happening in our country. We have issues with climate change. We have issues with drugs. We have issues with the organized crime and all of that. It's certainly not a good place to be in. But in saying that, I think the big one for us is this the fuel crisis and what's happening in the Gulf states, what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. I think people need to appreciate that we have a problem, we have a major challenge. And not only that, I think people also need to be mindful of the fact that we also have a major challenge when it comes to drugs and the associated factors, the connected issues to drugs. You got HIV coming from the sharing of needles, for instance. You have the addiction rate going up. You have unemployment. You have the fact that we don't have established rehabilitation centers that will address some of the concerns that we have now. You have organized crime, and you have the disturbing or the worrying crime statistics. So, in a nutshell, so much is happening. Major challenges for the government, and as you highlighted, major challenges on the political front.
Steve, before we go to break, is it a matter of priorities? We're not getting our priority right. We should have been focused on, national development, the economic resilience. We've been tangled, so to speak, in our own local political issues, the COI, and getting distracted from the real needs of the country.
Yes.
The infrastructure, the things that will give us the foundation. But we all basically that whole last 3 years has been on
focus on the internal bickering.
The FICAC, the constitution, the judiciary, the battles that's still ongoing. What's your thoughts before we go to the break, Stephen?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because interestingly, I'm part of an international team put together by the Secretary General of the United Nations to review the SDGs. And one of the things coming out is that our development strategies in the last few years, not only Fiji but the Pacific generally, and of course many other countries, has not led to the kind of development which is intended. So, 2022, the UN passed a resolution to do with social solidarity economy, which is to do with how you can mobilize resources and people. I don't think Fiji has taken it up. A lot of focus in terms of development has been on growth, has been on physical responsibility, and then forgetting about poverty, forgetting about those at the lower levels of socioeconomic strata in society. And so these are the ones which, so you create all kinds of issues when you do that. So I think that should be the focus and that should be the priority in terms of development. A lot of the focus now, as we've seen, has been on institutional structures to do with review of the Constitution, for instance. And very little is to do with addressing the very foundation of our socioeconomic direction and the way we're moving. Poverty is getting worse and worse, and that breeds other things. It feeds into drugs, it feeds into unemployment, feeds into social instability and national security as well in a big way. So they're all interconnected.
Great discussion. We're having here with two great gentlemen, Professor Stephen Ratuva.
Don't go anywhere.
And Editor-in-Chief of Fiji Times, Fred Wesley. Join us after the break. Welcome back. You're watching The Brunch on My TV. We have Professor Stephen Ratuva from the University of Canterbury joining us live from Auckland. And here in Suva from Bart Street, our very own Fred Wesley of the Fiji Times. Gentlemen, the fuel crisis presents challenges, but one other way to look at it, we've got to think positive, is it presents opportunities. How can government use this as an opportunity, maybe to reset? Stephen.
Oh, yes, certainly. Out of crisis, we can actually identify opportunities. because that's how opportunities and innovation historically after wars and after um, periods of turmoil and crisis. The number of things we can be looking at. One is to speed up alternative energy sources like um, um, the solar power, for instance. They should invest more and more into that rather than burning, garbage, which will generate more um, emission in the atmosphere. And also, we have to strengthen our social protection system so that when times are hard, at least the government will have a pool of money to, in a short term, address uh, the problems of people, particularly the poor. And also we have to start looking at the kinds of economic development policy that uh, philosophy that we have to make sure that we're able to address crisis. It's a crisis, I suppose, accommodation kind of approach to development. So that we've gone through uh, COVID, we've gone through coups, so we've learned how to deal with crisis, but there are different kinds of crisis. Now, the energy crisis is something different. And I think it's important to look at how the new economic model that we have should be such that we're able to address the issue of energy crisis pretty quickly and effectively.
This energy crisis really shows our vulnerability,
Yes, it
Jacquee.
does.
I mean, and Fred, I'd like to bring you in on that because we talk about all the different challenges facing the country, but we really need to invest, some would say, in trying local energy sources
Yeah.
as much as possible. How do you see that, that overcoming or addressing those challenges, how we can do that effectively?
Well, thank you. I kind of will echo the sentiments of Professor. Alternative energy sources. We have the windmill energy source at Mutoni, and then you have these alternatives. I mean, we have fine weather almost right around the year in the Western Division. But then, what's happening with policies? What's happening with accessibility, making this available for the general public? I mean, it's pretty expensive here in Fiji to invest in solar energy, for instance. It'll come up to a couple of thousand, and not many people can afford that. But yes, when we look at what's happening in the Strait of Hamas, when we look at what's happening, geopolitically, we are not immune to the challenges of the world. I've always said this. And one of the things that we at the Fiji Times are trying to do is to try and get the people engaged and understand the challenges that we could face, understand the challenges that that's been driven by geopolitical tension or tension in the Gulf, for instance. And just understanding all of that and appreciating where we sit in the mechanics, where we sit in the greater scheme of things. But again, I think a lot depends on us moving in that direction, alternative sources of energy, and making that accessible to the people.
It's a good point there, Jacquee, because we haven't discussed these issues enough.
No.
And we need to take the initiative. Otherwise, our people, I keep saying this in the last few weeks, our people get engaged in Chat Fiji
Yes.
and have all these useless discussions
That's true. Yeah.
on rubbish issues,
Nothing that's going to move the
move
nation
anything,
forward.
move us
or
forward. So
yeah.
we've really got to. That's a good point. I think the Fiji Times starting there, the media and even the leadership. We have to engage more in discussing ways forward,
Yes.
with the expertise that we have. And this is another issue. The experts, I mentioned it at the Fiji Accountants Congress, the experts need to come out and speak out and give their views about the way forward and not keeping it in little silos.
Yeah.
And I think one other issue that keeps coming up through in the sentences and in the answers that you're giving, Stephen and Fred, is leadership.
It all comes down to leadership. Yes.
And Stephen, I'd like to just, what's your view of the leadership that we have at the moment, the challenges that we face? And, is this a hangover from the last, we keep using the 16 years, but now it's 20 years.
Yes.
And, 3 years after now, that so-called 16 years. But, how do you see the leadership performance and what needs to be done to get in either new leadership or for leader to step up?
Yeah.
What's the challenges or the things that's blocking for really good leadership to come out?
Thanks for that, Stan. When you're talking about leadership, you're really talking about a whole lot of things here. First of all, there are different kinds of leadership, not only just political leadership. There is uh, church leadership, which is very, very powerful in terms of the way they control people within that particular, within the church, for instance. You have traditional leadership. Certainly you have political leadership, but even political leadership is not, apart from just the, say, the president, the prime minister, you have the ministers, then you have. So, and then there are various issues which impact on this. One is to do with the resources to be able to do their work properly, and also the quality of people we put in there. And I was asked once by a friend of mine, so what's part of the problem with the general leadership system in Fiji? I said, basically two things. One is that we need basically two qualities. One is smart people, at the same time, clean people. Sometimes we have clean people who are not smart, or smart people who are not clean, or not smart and not clean at the same time. So we need people who have those two qualities, basically. So it's not easy to find those two, even in New Zealand or anywhere else in the world, both smart and clean at the same time, because that goes a long way. The issues of integrity, of honesty, conflict of interest, and of course being able to be strategic and innovative in our thinking, because a lot of the leadership qualities come from the way in which you're able to think analytically and critically in a clear way. At the moment, the different layers of leadership, whether it's to do with traditional leadership, church leadership, there are challenges in terms of not only the quality of people, all of the structures within which they work in. So I think it's important for us as a country to begin to identify good leaders coming through. Now the election is coming very soon. We're not sure when. Already the local elections are going to be deferred. We're not sure about the national election. So long term, that's one of the issues that we have to be looking at. Leadership at different levels.
Smart and clean.
Very.
Yeah, like our energy. We need smart and clean energy.
Smart and clean energy,
for
true.
moving forward into the future.
Fred, same question to you. How do you see the state of leadership and governance in our country? Do you think anything needs to change? What needs to be changed? Can it improve?
Well, Jacquee, thank you. And I think Stephen's good professors highlighted a lot of issues and factors that need to be addressed. But if I'm to speak from the perspective of the average man and woman on the street, I'd expect leadership that's assertive. That if things need to be done and if decisions need to be made, then they need to be made as and when they are expected to be made. We have so many challenges now, and right now we need very, very strong and assertive leadership. But then, in saying that, I'm also reminded about the fact that we have a government that's a coalition government, and you have three different leaders, and we also must embrace or accept the fact that when you upon reflection that you have that came in as the kingmakers. So obviously there are maybe challenges that they will face at their level on how decisions are made, decisions or decisions or action is implemented at the domestic or national level. But again, I think people need leadership that's assertive, leadership that's attentive to their needs, and I think with the fuel crisis that we're facing now, with the drugs challenges that we're facing now, infrastructure challenges, education, health. With all these challenges, there's so many things to attend to, so many things to deal with. But at the end of the day, the average man and woman on the street, what they want is decisive leadership, attentive leadership, and assertive leadership.
Decisive
Assertive,
leadership,
attentive.
decisive leadership,
Well
and sometimes you do get the feeling that some of our leaders are overwhelmed with the amount of issues. They feel
Yes, you do.
overwhelmed,
Yeah.
and that's where you need really a capable leadership.
Yes.
Because to be assertive, you need to be capable.
to be
Otherwise, you'll be
capable.
unsure
Yep.
and indecisive. We'll go to the break soon, but after the break, we'll discuss. Fred talked about the coalition. It's a good point to discuss with the elections coming up.
Yep.
How the political parties, how do we
Will they
assess
continue this?
to get
Do they
together?
think they can continue this moving
Or
forward?
will it people go their own way and for
That's right.
settings? So we'll talk about political parties after the break.
Yeah.
Don't go away.
Welcome back. You're watching The Brunch on My TV, and we're just having a wonderful conversation this morning with political sociological professor Stephen Ratuva and Fiji Times editor-in-chief Fred Wesley.
Yes, very enlightening stuff.
Very enlightening.
Some good points to consider. Now, we talked about this coalition. We talked about smart, clean leadership. And there's question marks there. Depending on who you speak to in the country, but there's been a lot of disillusionment we've seen.
Yes.
About in the hope that we held after the 16 years.
After 16 years, yes.
I think there is, I'll see what the views of Stephen and Fred are, whether Ramuka still has the support. I think he has still a base that's there. But there's also an element of disgruntlement about the country not heading
That's
where we
right.
were expected to be heading.
Yeah.
So, let's start maybe with the main one, with the leadership, with the Prime Minister's leadership. Ramuka, Stephen, you've known him for a long time. You've covered him from the '87 coup, and I'm not saying anything about your age. Just saying that you were around then, and his stint in the '90s as Prime Minister from 1992 to 1999. His time in the wilderness, where nobody wanted to know him, when in the Garissa government, and then the coup came. And then his return to SUDELPA leadership around 2016 after the loss in 2014, leading them in 2018, and then ultimately winning it in 22.
Yes.
You've seen his journey, and where do you think he stands now, and how do you see his leadership today, Stephen?
Well, I think it's been a long journey for him, and certainly now, as he grows towards the end of his career, things get more and more interesting. With PEP, the PAP, going through rough patch at the moment in terms of the Deputy Prime Minister, the former Deputy Prime Minister, is now going, on trial at the moment, together with the leader of the National Federation Party, who is one of Ramuka's partners in the coalition. The coalition is basically a marriage of convenience, like any other coalition, and I think PEP is going to struggle very, very hard to be able to come back. Ramuka, his leadership has been under a lot of scrutiny in recent years as a result of what people see as the lack of decisiveness, and also the contradictions within his circle, and also the internal dynamics within the coalition itself. The three political parties, the National Federation Party, the SUDELPA, and PEP. Outwardly, it appears to be stable, but there is, of course, stories, as we know, internal dynamics, which will, during the election, whenever that is going to be, will come out more and more. So both SUDELPA and the National Federation, but other political parties would be trying to take advantage of some of the challenges faced by PAP as a way of siphoning off some of the votes, some of the support, and um, I know that all the political parties are working very hard on their own. Some are already talking behind closed doors as a means of trying to have a new slate of leadership after the next election.
Fred, before we go into any of the other parties, how do you see, the PEP and the leadership right now from the Prime Minister, over the last 3 years? Because I mean, he had quite a strong support, and he probably still has. Who knows?
Probably, yes.
But there's been some of that. I don't know what the word is. Trust seems to have come under scrutiny lately.
Well, thank you, Stan. And I listened with interest to what Steve had to say, about internal dynamics. And he spoke about a marriage of convenience and also, the long journey that the Prime Minister, Sitiveni Rambuka, has had. That's just it. He's had a long journey and also marriage of convenience. When you talk about the coalition parties, I suppose it's not the ideal scenario that you'd want to have, especially when you come off something like past 16 years when you had decisions coming from one source. And if whoever disagreed, obviously, you'd have resignations coming forth and resignations for personal issues. And it happened over the past 16 years. So, when you look at the dynamics, when you look at how people were responding to what was happening before over 16 years, and you look at what's happening now, the really chalk and cheese. We are now more into an era where there's a leaning towards democracy and the way it should be. So obviously there are challenges. Decisions have to be made, but then you're mindful always of the fact that you have three different leaders who are playing a key role in how governance issues are resolved, or how we look at governance issues. So yes, it's not an easy thing to be not an easy team to be leading with different political ideologies, with different political leanings and expectations, and obviously expectations from the masses. So Delta supporters will have the expectations, the NFP supporters will have the expectations, and the People's Alliance obviously will have the expectations. So it's a massive challenge trying to be at the center of this and then trying to control and run the country. But again, when I speak on behalf of the average men and women on the street, they don't know this. What they want is decisive leadership. What they want is do what needs to be done.
And one can argue, maybe Stephen, that it's hard to be assertive when you have to be democratic. You have to consult.
True. Yes.
You have to get a variety of views.
Yeah.
And it really comes down sometimes from us in the media when I see some of the decisions, and you do wonder who is giving the advice.
That is right.
And sometimes it comes down to the quality of advice that that the Prime Minister is having. And what's your comments in that regard before we move on to discuss some of those that's in this marriage? Stephen?
Good question, because if you're in a position of leadership, like as Prime Minister or President, whatever, then then often you find yourself in a much bigger system of patronage. And in fact, the kind of patronage sometimes you bring with you, because when you're campaigning, you need people to support you in the campaigns, and you promise things. And then when you're in power, unfortunately, that kind of system of patronage comes with you. And whether to do with the Vanua, whether it's to do with connections with your province, connections with the corporate sector, connections with other political players. And these are the people who, because they think that they put you in power, and therefore they have also the right to make sure that you listen to them. So I suppose in our case, you have all these different players trying to make their voice heard and the interest. rather than the interests of the nation, rather than the interests of the people, rather than the interests of the men and women on the street, as mentioned earlier by Fred. Um,
Yeah.
some of the interests
Stephen, I
are
wanted to cut
largely
in there
driven by.
because I just wanted to cut in because, to speak plainly, you're referring, I assume, to the Prime Minister and the relationship with the President, Ratu Malalambalahu. Are you
Well, and
alluding to
others as
that?
well. And others as well. Uh, the people in the corporate sector want to leverage. The people in the community here and there, they want to leverage as well, apart from the Vanua connections. So that's one of the challenges in the Fiji politics,
Yeah.
because the way in which these patronage systems they play out, and sometimes they put a gun in your head. If you don't do this, we won't vote for you again. I'll tell
It,
my
and it's always been
Vanua that
there. It's
Yeah.
always been there, hasn't it? It's not nothing. It's just
it's
something
been
that
there.
our leaders have to navigate.
Yeah, it's something which has always been there, and it's a matter of how they can negotiate that with the national interest in mind, rather than just small communal interest.
Thank you. Fred, let's bring in. We're talking about this marriage.
Yeah.
The National Federation Party.
Yeah.
The situation they're facing now, their leader is no longer the Deputy Prime Minister, Biman Prasad. They have been heavily criticized from the Indo-Fijian community because of
Very.
their partnership
Yes.
with
They feel they're
with
not
PEP.
representing them well enough, not speaking up when they need to be.
What do you think is the NFP's effectiveness, and where do you think that where they go from here?
It's interesting. It's very interesting that you asked that question. I'm expected to be, to just treading that fine line where I don't lean towards any political party, but and agendas. But anyway, now that you've asked the question, I think the NFT, uh, I may not be straight up with this, but the NFP obviously have I can see that they have strategies in place, and I can already see the workings out there evident on the direction they are taking now. Now that Professor Biman Prasad is no longer the deputy prime minister, but in saying that, I can also see the direction that the People's Alliance are leaning towards, and obviously Sodelpa. They each have their strategies, and again, it's the government came into power on the base of this marriage of convenience between the National Federation Party, Sodelpa as the kingmakers, and the People's Alliance is the one with the highest number of votes. But again, it comes back down to what the average man and woman on the street want, and they want decisive leadership. They want effective leadership, and they want a responsive leadership as well.
Yeah, so there's a word that's used when three people are in a marriage, but I won't use that word.
No.
The strategies. Obviously, I get what you're saying, Fred, in terms of that it's we can see that they're setting themselves for any situation that whether they'll split and have to run their own lanes.
Yep.
But at the moment, I think they feel they all need to stay together.
Right now
They do need to stay together.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Steve, what's your, NFP is an old party. We know their history so long. They were totally out of the political scene.
Yeah.
They had no member of parliament, I think, from 2001 to 2014. And then they had a few members in opposition. I think it was only three in 2014. And a few others joined in 2018, and then they got the six now, 5 or 6 in the after the 2022 elections. So where do you think they'll be looking to grow? Because they've also lost a lot of support. Some would say not many, but a lot of support within the traditional base, the Indo-Fijian community.
Yeah, of course, the National Federation Party has been, as you said, it's the longest running party in history. And most of the Toke parties come and go. The original one, the Alliance Party, had long ago dispute, which used to be the, if you like, oppositional party to the National Federation Party alliance has been, after independence. So it's also, according to, I think, was it yesterday or the other day, in terms of assets, they're probably one of the richest parties as well, with about $800,000 worth of assets, which is quite huge by Fiji standard. So, and I think it has resilience to survive, although people have written them off, and although the leader is now going through the legal challenges. So, and I think there will others who will be in a position to take over from there. But I think it will be interesting to see how much support they still have in the next election. Some argue that they are lucky to get the seat, but I think they're probably re-strategizing at the moment to make sure that they sustain at least what they have and probably do better. And so parties like the Labour Party, which also has been around for a long time, since the 1980s, 85, I think, 84, 85, will try to take away some of the votes from the National Federation Party. But the Labour has been out of parliament for some time. And whether its leadership and whether the party itself has the capacity to be attractive to voters, that's another thing that has to be seen. Then you have the Unity Fiji, which is new, also has a clean slate in terms of its image. The leader is seen as both smart and clean, and how that will translate into votes, that's another issue. So, all the political parties have their challenges, and I think what they're trying to do now is focus on new strategies which will give them the upper hand and pull votes from each other, given the limited vote pool that we have. And we'll see how it plays out in the next few weeks.
Interesting discussion.
Very interesting.
Because you can't talk about NFP without talking about Labour. And whatever's happened in the past, Jacquee, what's important now is how people will try and win this next election.
Yes. Next election is the most important one for them. Well, we're going to discuss more on this, focus on another party, but we're going to go to a commercial break right now. Join us after the break.
Welcome back. You're watching The Brunch on my TV. I'm Stanley Simpson with Jacquee Speight, and we're joined by Stephen Ratuva and Fred Wesley. Great discussions we've had so far.
Wonderful discussion.
Wonderful discussions. There's a lot of movement, a lot of summonses coming to the news quite a bit. This last week is Unity Fiji, Narumbe.
Yes.
And you mentioned him a bit, Stephen. Fred, he has struggled to make the breakthrough.
He has.
We all know economically he has the expertise, but he doesn't seem to be. Maybe Steve, you can touch on this a bit more before we go to Fred. He doesn't seem to be getting through to say a wider base or to the ordinary people, and that's I think the advantage that people like Rambuka and some of these more politicians that speak to the. I say to what the people want, especially the Eat OK base. What do you think is Narumbe's challenge, Stephen?
Well, like I said, one of his the great things about him is the fact that he's very much technically geared towards being, a good economist in terms of his economic vision. But perhaps one of his downfalls and the downfall of the party has to do with how it connects with the grassroots. They're probably addressing that now, particularly in the West, because as we said earlier, for political parties, particularly the Tokay-linked political parties, to be able to succeed in generating votes, they have to connect somehow with the Vanua organizations, and how that can be leveraged as a way of generating votes. So there's something which he hasn't been able to successfully do. So now with the fact that he's engaging at the grassroots level with the diaspora overseas in the United States, I know he's been doing a lot of work in there, Australia, New Zealand, as well as in the western side of Fiji. Now there's a new revival of the Western consciousness in relation to politics. It's always been happening historically with parties from the West emerging, as we saw historically. So the grievances about being left out, although they produce the most in terms of resources, whether it's sugar, whether it's gold, tourism. And I think that issue will come up again. And political parties like Unity Fiji will certainly take advantage of that sentiment as a way of mobilizing its votes in the next election. So, which means that it will be in a position to connect with the grassroots of the West.
We'll see how that works out. Well, the other person, the other party in that marriage is Sodelpa.
Yes.
They also held their base. I mean, majority of the support seems to have moved to PEP in the 2022 elections. But Fred, they are there, and then there's we haven't maybe talked as much as we should be about the opposition.
No, we haven't.
And their performances and where it's heading, because I mean there's question marks. I mean there's some real standout performers like Premila, Usamate, but they don't seem to have the coordinated opposition that we used to have that would really take on government. And then there's the new parties that's forming up or trying to get registered.
Trying to get registered.
And then basically the revival of the former.
What did the supervisor of elections say? 10.
About 10 being looked at,
parties.
yeah. Fred, how are you seeing that landscape? Is that kind of normal in Fiji's political journey, that we have all these parties that come up just before the elections, and then the small parties trying to make sure that they assert their space in the field?
Well, Stan, I'm not sure where we're heading with this, but you mentioned that smaller parties coming in and the other parties trying to assert their authority, or if I may. But I think one of the things that we sort of have to understand and appreciate here, is the way the election has been fought. You have this star appeal status thing, where there's someone who is expected to carry the weight of the party, where you have someone who's expected to attract attention, someone who's expected to engage the masses and get them to follow the party. So I suppose at the end of the day, this is probably a massive challenge for people like Mr. Narumbe, for instance, Sodelpa, who are now refocusing and re-strategizing. And I suppose it's also something that the NFP is obviously mindful of. And then you have Siti Rambuka, the Prime Minister, and other members of his party. I think a lot rests on how that is managed. And then you obviously having the way social media is now trending, misinformation, disinformation, and how this all ties in with the image of parties, reflections on what they do, and the challenges that they face, and the opportunities and options that they provide. So I think there's a massive challenge for political party leaders leading up to the next general election, and whenever that's going to be.
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to round up soon.
I wish we didn't have to.
Yeah, this is a great discussion. We'll have to continue it.
We'll have to have a special
Hopefully this
show
generates
just for
more
this.
discussions. I mean, we'll have to have this kind of conversations going forward. But Stephen, I'd like to get your thoughts on the opposition. And you mentioned a bit about Chowdhury and the others who are there. Where do they can obviously, I believe they can see that the government is quite vulnerable.
Yep.
Still strong though, but it comes down to the strategy that they use.
And is it going to work to their advantage?
And is it going to work to their advantage? But they haven't been effective. That's the view that some have. That they haven't been as effective as former oppositions in the past. What's your view?
Yeah, the number of reasons why opposition hasn't been very effective. One is that these are individual voices. Because remember, when the Fiji First was dismantled as an opposition party, that's when individuals became just single voices, random voices here and there, but then labeled as opposition. So when you talk about opposition now in Fiji, you're not talking about a coherent opposition party as such, as in the Westminster system of government. We're really talking about individuals, random voices, and that's how the what's happened in the last few years. The way in which the political ecosystem in Fiji has evolved, has the opposition has been undermined by the way in which things have evolved. So hopefully, after the next election, we have a much more united opposition voice, which is able to use its official opposition platform to be able to engage with the government, whatever the government would be.
Great discussion.
Absolutely great discussion. Thank you so much, Professor. Time has caught up with us, gentlemen. We wish we could continue this, but unfortunately...
Time's caught up. But great to speak to you again, Professor Stephen Ratuva from the
Yes.
University of Canterbury, flying the flag for Fiji. We hope you can come back and contribute here one day. I know you'll come back one day, but we'll have a discussion about that. We will not discuss you here on the brunch.
Fred, thank you so much for joining us this morning as well. Thank you
Fred, thank you for
very
always
much.
stepping in to join us. Always welcome your thoughts and views. You're right in the middle of trying to understand the dynamics and the direction the country is moving. We'll try and get you back in the future. Now that we've had this discussion,
Oh, yes.
and we'll keep addressing and talking about the issues
We will.
that the country is going through at the
Yeah.
moment. That's it from us. I hope you've
you.
found the show useful. Join us again next Tuesday at the same time. Modemanda.
Stay safe.